I remember when I first got introduced to, I shouldn't say introduced, but when MUFON became a reality to me.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was the X-File episode Max.
Oh yeah, love that
right?
episode. Yeah,
the guy's in his Airstream, and he's got the like the CIA comms gear, and he's so that was a cool thing. He's wearing a MUFON hat. He's like the secret guy. So that was the first time he'd ever heard of it. You didn't really know what it was. Is that a government agency? Yeah. But it's not. It's a civilian agency. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious. You're now the assistant director of the Arizona division, but you started out as an investigator.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious about, first of all, like, what made you want to do it?
Yeah.
And two, what's it like?
Yeah. So, I was a religious person most of my life. We left that. And during that time, it would have been taboo to even show any interest in UFOs or anything like that. So kind of on the down low, I was curious.
Mm-hmm.
I have some history with it in my childhood. And around 2010, I decided, I'm going to just look into this quietly and so forth. And I started reading books. And the first book I read was, at that point for me, kind of questionable. And I'm like, oh boy, is this topic going to be just, BS, or is there something to it? And I almost quit right then. But then, I won't mention the book. Then it just so happened in 2010, Leslie Kean wrote a book called UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Public Officials Go on the Record. And she's an investigative journalist, not a UFO person per se. And the way that book was written, and she profiled, a couple dozen cases, and again, from the point of view of investigative journalists, and I really liked it. And I thought, okay, now we're talking. There's credible people, there's credible information. Okay, I'm down with that. So I started researching more and more. And after a couple of years, I got to a point, and I'm not bragging, I'm just saying I acquired a lot of knowledge and understanding of the topic, but now what, right? And I'm like, and I'm the kind of person, I want to play, I want to engage. I'm not just happy just sitting back and maybe learning or observing. I want to do something. I wanted to have my own experiences, not necessarily like I don't want to be abducted, but I mean, I wanted to contribute to the community and all of that. And so I looked around, and I've been in government myself for the last 25 years. I've worked for big corporations, and so I know I can function in that environment and be successful. And as I looked around, MUFON seemed to be the only real organized effort, from an organizational perspective. You have individual researchers and that kind of thing, but MUFON was very different. And as I researched it, I decided, I'm going to become a member, just get a feel for the land, the lay of the land. And I liked the idea that you could become an investigator. They would train you to do so. And so after a year or two of being a member, then I applied to become an investigator. And I went through all of the training. There's a manual that you get, and then there's MUFON University, which is a series of video training sessions on everything from astronomy to, forensic site development and just all of these things. And so it was really comprehensive, really good. And then once you complete that, you go through a background check and some things, and then finally you get assigned to a chapter. It's usually regionally based, right? So I lived in Arizona, I'm going to be part of the Arizona chapter. And then that director buddies you up with an investigator who's seasoned, and then you go through several cases with them, and then when they feel like you're ready to go on your own, they start assigning you cases on your own. And so that's really how it started for me. So 2010, I was a member. 2015, I became a member. 2017, became an investigator. In 2020, I became the assistant director. And I also wrote my book in 2020. Everything was kind of coming together. And then, of course, the COVID crash. But mostly didn't affect my UFO work, other than you couldn't meet with people in person during that some of that time. But at any rate, it's really fascinating. Sometimes it's really boring. Sometimes, you meet really interesting people. And I have to say, the people involved with ufology are just some of the coolest people ever. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a little old lady from Kneecap, Iowa, and you're an investigator, you can do awesome things with that, you don't have to be a scientist or a lot of MUFON are former military and former law enforcement. And I think that's pretty logical because you kind of get the same kick from that, right? Mm-hmm. investigation, meeting people and, researching and just doing all those things. And so that, and that really appealed to me, though I'm not, former law enforcement.
Well, you're an engineer,
military.
right?
I do work in civil engineering.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're a logical guy. You probably want facts, right? Mm-hmm. You want things to make sense. Mm-hmm. You don't want things way out in left field going, oh, I believe in that. Like you want stuff to be well understood, well documented, analyze them. And from the little that I've looked at, like MUFON's website, it does look like that's the organization they are. They don't seem to be kind of like like a paranormal website, I guess I would say. They do seem to be more fact and science based. They log things, they report them. They don't, from what I've seen, they don't like make suggestions about them. They just are like, here's a UFO or UAP, whatever language you're using. And it's very kind of factual and analytical. Yeah,
it very much is so. And you got to think the history of ufology. So let's say 1947 is really the start of our modern UFO era. However, there's documented everything from the Bible and all the way through history, things that look and sound like UFO encounters and described. And but that being said, 1947, our modern era, everything started really with Roswell. And the U.S. government, some really interesting things were happening at the time. So, of course, World War II had just ended. And the United States was going through a major reorganization. And Truman, in fact, just days or weeks after Roswell, the CIA was formed. The Army and the Air Force.
Very interesting tidbit right there.
Okay, cool. So, I got more. The CIA was formed. The Army and the Air Force were one branch. They separated that, and they did some other things. So, some people think it might be related to UFOs, but I think it was more of the fact that lessons learned from World War II. You're resetting. The Cold War is starting, and so the whole methodology and the tone, everything began to change, and I think intelligence became, the biggest factor. You had military might in the past, but
World War II changed everything for just about everything in this country. I mean, it was the biggest data point on change in this country. I mean, everything changed. Our institutions, every single one of them, decided that they were going to just get huge, and then there was no accountability and oversight. I didn't mean to step in, but it's not just the CIA; it's every institution, especially on the defense side. I think that's when the Department of Defense came about, or at least they changed it from Department of War to Department of Defense. And there's a lot of things that were in the works and moving after World War II.
Yeah. Some of those are probably really good, like Army, Air Force being separate branches. You're specializing in one thing. That's probably pretty good.
Yeah,
but
I
some
think
of the
the
other
intentions,
stuff,
right?
Yeah.
The intentions, a lot of this is good. What happens over time as you start losing accountability and the new people come in, and the politicians only stay for 4, 6, 8 years, and then but you've got bureaucrats who are lifers, and so these things get buried away. And anyway, we're getting down a rabbit hole here, but just wanted to.
Yeah, no, I totally agree that, and again, I've worked for a local government for 25 years, and I understand how that happens. It isn't, conspiracies are real. Okay, if you just whittle it down to what is a conspiracy, the definition is just two or more people plan to do something that's nefarious in some way, or from the point of view of someone else. So, but it's not necessarily nefarious, and that's not really the right word. But I'll take it like this: a family, right? me and my wife, we might, have an argument or something, and I might be mad at her. She might be mad at me for a few days or whatever. Well, I'm not out there telling my friends and other family members, and she's not doing that. We're keeping that secret, kind of like a conspiracy, but we just don't want to air our dirty laundry. And when you think about it, corporations and governments have that same thing. Things go wrong. Government is huge, bureaucracy, but they're still made up of humans, individual humans, and stuff just goes wrong.
It's probably not two guys in the CIA going, hey, let's start a conspiracy.
Yeah.
It's more like, hey, let's do this thing that's off the books and let's keep it secret. And then someone finds out there's a whistleblower, there's something that leaks, and they're like, oh, that's a conspiracy. Well, it's probably a well-intentioned thing.
Yes.
Maybe it's not in the eyes necessarily of the people of the United States and their perspective, but from those people in the CIA who don't want to let that known because it's some kind of secret operation. Yeah. That's how. I think that's probably more likely how it happens.
Yeah, and I understand government needs to be able to do that. When it comes to UFOs, though, it appears that they have overclassified everything. In other words, just because a UFO or UAP, and I use those interchangeably, it doesn't need to be secret. Now, I get, methods and means and people and names, and, those things could, need to be kept private, but you can redact that stuff and the rest of this story can come out. So, but, another thing I think that's contributed to all this is like 9/11. And, I think I read after the 9/11, I read the 9/11 report, and they created some 1,100 new intelligence agencies or groups after that. Can you imagine?
How do you manage that?
Yeah, how can you manage it? So I think it's real easy to lose control of a lot of this stuff. And
the politicians, they get cred from their voters by doing stuff like, oh, hey, we're going to go with the Department of Homeland Security. I'm pretty sure that was after 9/11. That was a Bush thing. And then there's the Patriot Act. All this stuff is like, hey, we're going to protect you after this. But next thing you know, George Bush is gone, and the next guy's in, and all these little agencies, like you said, get spun out. And who's in control? Who's in charge? Yeah. Like the oversight committees. Do we really have oversight?
Well, I think with after 9/11, when the Patriot Act, when they first put that out there, I think everybody was like, let's get these guys. This is great. Now you're able to do this stuff.
Regrettably, I did the same, man.
Right. And then it's like, and then you have Obama running on, this is ridiculous. We need to get rid of this. But he ended up expanding it.
Yeah.
And it was like, now 20 some years later, we all sit here and go, God, man, that was not a great idea. And I actually don't like that, man.
Should you imagine being a politician or someone in the government who can use that to your advantage? And not that people probably aren't like, I want to screw the American people. But if it can give you a little bit more power, a little bit more cover for the things that you want to do, maybe behind closed doors where the American people aren't on board, but you're like, I know better than them because I've got this secret information that they don't know about. Yeah. It gives them a little bit more power, a little bit more flexibility, and it pushes us as the people farther away from the truth and what's really going on.
Yeah, and when you look at what's going on right now, like this, we'll probably talk more about it, but like House Oversight Committee has opened up hearings and briefings on UAP, and I'm really watching this because it's very fascinating, and people are hoping for disclosure. But it's still, there's a lot of sensitivities that maybe the average American doesn't recognize. But another big issue, kind of what you're talking about, are special access programs within the government, the military, and the intelligence community, where they do stuff that is, off the books, out of oversight. And this is, to me, a big barrier for this true disclosure, is because, Congress is unaware, even though they're assigned oversight of these programs. They see a line item on the budget, Black Program 1, $1 billion. Okay, that's it. That's all they know. And so when you don't have adequate oversight and accountability, that's when things get spun. And so I think this is one of the hangups, is for this to get completely disclosed could put people in jeopardy legally for the things that they've done. So, so this is a thorny issue, and I've always advocated that they're going to need to create some sort of legal immunity for folks who are in the know on this stuff to really get it out. But there's still a big push within government who never want it out. And so that's the civil war that's going on right now.
I totally agree with that. And that immunity is I think for the UAP program, I think it's probably necessary. There's a lot of other programs where I don't think there should be any leniency. But UAP, I do agree with you. I think that there's a lot of people, it's easy in hindsight to blame people. And I think the conspiracy over time just built upon itself, and they classified things probably because they were just trying to be cautious. And who knows? I guess we're talking right now like there are aliens. I mean, that's another question. You are now assistant director. What... You believe in aliens?
So this is a little complicated, and I'm not trying to. I'm not trying to.
He's got a physics degree.
Oh God, here we go. Here we
go. First of all, for me personally, my role as an investigator requires a certain mentality. Then I have my personal opinion as well, right? Sure. So, in my role as an investigator, the way I see it. When I first started out, I was a nuts and bolts investigator. That was my interest in UFOs. Is what is that metallic machine in the air flying? Whose is it? Why is it there? And back in the 40s and 50s, the mentality, the theory for that was, hey, it was someone from another planet flying here, right? And that was mature enough at the time to kind of, move that issue forward. But the observations began to change, and people and the UFOs, they might have been flying saucers early on, then they became triangles, and then cigar shaped, and then there was more to the phenomena. Then there were landings, and then there were abductions. This thing has evolved over time, and so if the observations are evolving, your theory must also. So when I even started in 2010 researching it and then got involved investigating by 2017, I think things changed. And I moved from more of a nuts and bolts guy to more of the woo-woo guy. And this is just kind of a term people use in the UFO community, dealing with more about the issues of who and why and consciousness and all of these kind of deeper things, which are further away from the scientific method where you can make an observation, you develop a theory, you test that theory, and it's an iterative process. It goes on and on and on. Well, so as an investigator, I have to be completely free of bias. I'm not really pro-alien or anti-alien. That is not in my DNA. So I frame it this way. 100% UAPs are real. They are objectively, measurably real. They appear on optical cameras, thermal cameras, FLIR cameras.
And when you say UAP, they are surely not they're surely not man-made. That's specifically, because you could say,
yes.
I don't know, UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon?
Now they're calling it unidentified anomalous phenomena, which I think is good because the observations have changed, right?
Right.
It isn't just in the air. The observations are in the water, in the air, and space, right?
Does that start to take out, because UFO, it's just unidentifying flying object, but it could be man-made, right? Technically it's just, I don't know what that is. It's in the air.
Exactly.
So now you're specifically saying, no doubt there are stuff flying in our airspace that is not man-made.
That's right. Okay. And that's not just me. That's the United States Navy. That is the Department of Defense. That is the intelligence community, including CIA. All acknowledge the reality that this is not our tech. And so if you're observing tech, what conclusion do you inevitably have to make? That somebody created it, that somebody is operating it, right? And intelligence. So I've gravitated from just aliens to non-human intelligence. And the reason is because, again, based on observations, one of the ways that you tell a UAP is not something that would eventually be identifiable is its performance characteristics. So let's take the 2004 Nimitz case where an aircraft carrier strike group was training off the coast of California, about 100 miles in workups before they go to the Gulf. And they're doing this training mission. And over the period of 3 weeks, hundreds of these tic-tac-like UFOs or UAP engaged the ships, the cruisers, the destroyers.
Engaged.
Engage is strong, but, well, one of the things that caught my attention on that is that Dave Fravor was a pilot of one of the F-18 groups, and they were being jammed. And if you were jamming another guy's radar, you know, a Russian or Chinese or American, that's an act of war, right? So I consider that engagement, right? It was a lie. It was at a distance, whatever. But if those guys, you know, got jacked up because of it, then good enough for me, right? So, but long story short, the reality of something not human is all around us and engaging us. And the other reason I like NHI, non-human intelligence, is because we're also observing things that are less craft-like, but have behavior. So a very common sighting reported to us today is a light in the sky or an orb that just look like balls of light. Now, could there be a craft contained in them? Of course, but that's just not been discerned yet, right?
It's a little broader term.
Yes.
It encompasses a little bit more. Like, we don't know that they're biological entities. We don't have one that we know of, but there's something that's unknown that is not of our intelligence. Yeah.
Yeah, and think about even the course of history. Maybe one man's angel or a demon is another man's alien or a fairy or what. We don't have any of those things knocked, in my opinion, right? That they are tantalizingly just out of our reach all of the time, which to me suggests intelligence behind it. Now our technology is, you know, increasing, and this is probably one reason that we're seeing them more, and maybe they've morphed a little bit and different. You know, maybe they're adjusting to our level of technology and understanding. Like I said, back in the 40s, it was a flying saucer. You don't really see those anymore. Why? You know, what has changed? You know, so anyways, that's so my answer to your question really is I think aliens are a possible answer. Now, 100%, there's non-human intelligence. I just can't commit and say what it is. Whether it's an alien or an angel or whatever term or something we haven't even conceived of. Yeah. So, but when I approach a case, you know, somebody reports an observation or experience, I go in that as neutral as I can. And that's doing a good service to that person who made the report, to MUFON, to myself, to the community at large. Let's be intellectually honest on all of this stuff to the degree that we can.
Yeah, and that's a great thing to know if you're an outsider not knowing much about MUFON, just knowing it's kind of a UFO or UAP organization, that you really do treat these cases almost like, well, an investigation, like a police force would.
100%.
Non-biased. You don't come in there assuming that, you know, that this person's telling the truth or not telling the truth. You come in there and you get the facts and you report them and you analyze them. I mean, I think that's the best way you can do it. And it's no wonder why I think MUFON has been going on since 1969, because I think they are a light in a lot of this haze of understanding what this whole phenomenon is, of real analysis and non-biased analysis.
Yeah, I would say that I would even say MUFON is pretty conservative when it comes to the issue. They try and live in the world of identifiable fact, and again, they train their members to do so. For example, here in Arizona, for the last 6 years, we've conducted a 3-day boot camp, investigator boot camp, And we have people from all over the world come in. We can only do 40 or 50 people at a time. But we come in, we do classroom training on things like photo analysis, field work. We actually go out in the desert in the Superstition Mountains, and we create faux crash scenes, and we bury evidence and or present it in such a way then these groups of students go and we kind of follow a script, and you need to find this stuff, and they just go through the act of processing a crime scene.
Yeah.
And some of our trainers are PD, police department officers, active ones. Some are federal law enforcement officers, in particular the Navajo Rangers, and they come and they do training. So, the emphasis is absolutely on data collection, verify what you can, and in all honesty, about 85% of things reported are identifiable through our rigorous investigative process. So things like astronomical features, the cliches, the planet Venus, right? A meteor. But those things happen. Aircraft, satellites, drones. There are a lot of optical illusions, like meteorological stuff that happens. And it's not to say that people aren't intelligent, or easily fooled or gullible. That not at all. I've been fooled. It's just when you're in a situation and you don't, maybe the context is off for you. You're visiting somewhere, whatever. It just can throw you, and just, it's just not easy. So, but I think 85% of the time it is something identifiable, but it's that 15% of the time that's not. And I'm not saying 15%, I don't have enough data, so therefore it's unknown. No, I have enough data to know that it isn't these 15 or 20 things that we could explain it with, right? So that's a difference.
Walk us through like a fun day.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a great case, if you can get it, is a actual landing or somebody who's had contact in some way because of the potential of physical evidence. So normally our investigations you do over the phone, a lot of it, right? And you do your research on your computer, and we have, applications for, Flight Radar 24. You can track any plane, date, time, location, all of that kind of thing. Heavens Above, you'll know where every satellite is, or Stellarium. That's an application that's like for astronomy, and you can, paint the sky in that location at that time, and you can see everything. You can even do a video, and say it happened over an hour. You can see it'll play a video for you of what was in the sky, right? So, we have really good tools that can help identify those things. But, when you've done all that and you don't have anything to explain it, then we will identify those as an unknown. So, and you guys might be familiar with Project Blue Book.
Yeah.
From the U.S. Air Force, 1952-ish through 1969. They had over 12,000 cases that were reported to them. And out of those, 701 were not identifiable. Now, I will say their investigations weren't really investigations. It was mostly a PR move to just, make the issue go away. But they did have some real science. This short-haired Dr. J. Allen Hynek, he was the technical advisor, and he was very skeptical and a real debunker at first, but over his tenure, he began to realize, oh boy, there's something real to this, and he actually became a believer and then started his own UFO organization after he left the Air Force. So this is ingrained in our history. This is part of America. It really is.
Do you often get physical evidence?
Not often, but when we do, the type of evidence you get is radiological, chemical traces, broken tree branches, a gouged up soil, burned plants, wilted, things like that. And then, of course, there are also pieces of UFOs out there. So there have been several cases where the UFOs drip some sort of material, and then people have been able to recover it. One was a case where it was a very unusual, almost looked like a meteor. It looked like a melted glob of metal that kind of came to a point as though it were falling and, kind of getting roughed up. And it was like, had a super high degree of strontium in it, which, was very unusual, let's say. There's a piece that's floating out there that's been analyzed that is a layered, it's a chunk, and it's layered with bismuth and a few other things that do not go together, and they don't know how it could have been put together, and on a, like on an atomic scale, how it's arranged. It's almost like nanoparticles and that kind of thing. So, and that was found back in the, I'm not sure if that was the 60s or 80s, but at any rate, so there's stuff out there that people see. So I have not had a trace evidence case. Well, I had one on the border, Sierra Vista, and it was a border patrol. He was actually an officer, and he had an abduction experience, and he had wounds on his body, and we utilized our Geiger counters and some strange things were recorded on his property. Let's put it that way. So that's kind of the norm, is that you're gonna just, again, it's that just out of reach stuff. It's so frustrating,
Any of the materials that you found in physical evidence where you can go, okay, this doesn't even, that we know of, exist here?
None of mine personally, but yes.
There's been some.
Oh, yeah. And we have a lab. MUFON has a lab in Missouri. So, like, I had a case recently, a woman who felt that she was kind of zapped by something, and she had basically a scab on her head, and she removed it, and we sent it to the lab to get analyzed, see if there's anything unique about it. Nothing came of that. But you take your shot. You do the best you can with what you got, and that's the frustration with this whole thing.
Well, and if there are aliens and they're out there zapping you, they're still using the same physics and the same elements that we are. I mean, our universe is bound by the elements and stuff. Of course, there are certain things that are on this planet that may not be on this planet, that might be elsewhere in the universe. But I would imagine it would be hard to say, oh yeah, that was definitively something alien by just some kind of composition.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of that material out there. So even the stuff that you're going to hear, like from David Grush, and talking about to Congress, and I guess today or tomorrow, they're going to finally get in the skiff, be able to talk with him about specifics. But those sorts of materials are in the possession of the government and their contractors. Some of it's known, and I'm sure there's a ton that's not known. And those analyses are being performed. So that's one of the things I'm really looking for when disclosure comes, is what kind of physical evidence that we would agree is proof could be put forth. So that's a point that I really like to make, is that proof. When you get down to it, all proof it's just something where we all agree to say it's true.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of people.
It's a slippery word.
It is slippery. And a lot of people won't accept something as proof. Another group might. But so, in other words, when this disclosure happens and are aliens real, probably for most people, you're going to have the whole. It lands on the White House lawn. President
Video
comes out and says, "My fellow Americans, we're not alone," right?
Take me to your leader.
And even then, it's like, well, is that AI? Or we could do a lot of stuff with cool biologics.
That's right.
Now,
But I will say, people in the know will know long before that. In fact, people know right now.
Do you really think the government knows anything?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So are you guys familiar with Skywatchers and Jacob Barber?
I wanted to talk to you about that.
Yeah. So these are guys that they're firsthand witnesses. They're the guys doing some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And they're coming out and they're putting out the data that scientists can, start taking their swings at. And I think that's, absolutely. Now, is it, again, like this conspiracy says that, they all know. And no, look, again, I'll use my case. You can work in government and sit next to some dude in the cubicle next to you. You don't know anything about the work he does, right? I got my work, you got your work, and now I'm a manager, and I kind of have to know what everyone does. But it could be... It's
compartmentalized in the government. A lot of that secret stuff is compartmentalized.
Yeah, and even not so secret is compartmentalized just because, again, we're human beings, and we go to work, and we do our job for 8 hours and blah, 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 right? It is just so hard to nail something down. But that's why we have belief, right? Humans, we believe things without proof, which wigs me out a little bit, but I do it too. And you have to, right? Because going back to that whole scientific theory, there's gaps in a theory. And so until you prove it, you have belief, right?
Yeah.
It's a little bridge that gets you from not knowing to knowing.
Yeah.
That's what belief does.
You have to make assumptions, and then there's assumptions everywhere. Big Bang itself has massive assumptions. Evolution has assumptions. Religion has assumptions.
Yep.
Everywhere. I feel like to assume we're going to know definitively just about anything is hard, even in science, even in physics.
That's right.
A lot of that's based on assumptions. And, like, for instance, quantum physics, we can do the measurements, we can do the experiments, but we have no idea really what's behind it or why. Even the guys who do the experiments every day really don't understand it. They just know that they can do these certain experiments and they'll get certain results. And so, not knowing the why or not really understanding deeply those things, you're just basically getting a consensus, I think, of scientists. Like, okay, well, quantum physics is real. I can do the experiments on it, but we have no idea what it means, And then you move into the world of consciousness, and I know you mentioned that earlier. The world's a wild place, and full of unknowns. Let's talk about Jake Barber real quick.
Okay.
What did you think of his interview? I'm assuming, I don't know, maybe you don't know. You probably don't know him. You probably just watched the interview, right?
Yeah,
or do you know him any more than that? What did you think of that interview?
The original one with Russ Coulthart on the news. Yeah. I mean, it was, I was like, really watching hard because these are the guys that you want to hear from that we've not been able to. And I thought it was very interesting. Just some general observations. Are they full of crap? No. These guys, it's my opinion that they're the real deal. And they are going about it in a way. This is the bummer. So being MUFON, we're civilian. We got no power, right? And we're like fishermen, right? Just if something comes up and hits our hook, great, and you do the best you can with it. Yeah. But for them, the military, the government, whomever is, these things happen in their domain, right? Like Aero and ATIP and OSAP and all those guys, they have a domain, and that domain they have control over. They have instrumentation. They have resources we don't have, and I understand why they want to focus on those cases because that's where the more rich data lives, right? The civilian stuff's pretty willy-nilly. It's really hard to nail it down. So, the way he speaks, his group speaks, and the way they're acting, to me, is how I would do it if I were in that position. So, and what it appears that they're doing is they have figured out two ways to initiate contact. Now, this has been the rub. When you study something, you get it in the lab and you take it apart and blah, blah, blah. But UAP don't cooperate. They don't show up when you want, where you want. They don't cooperate in any way. It's just incredibly difficult to study, But so these guys have said, okay, let's bring them to the lab in some way, right? Their lab, they call it the range. I'm sure it's a test site somewhere, Nevada, Utah, somewhere. And they are able to call in, let's call it that, UAP. And they have two methodologies. One they have people called psionics, right?
That's crazy. That was a crazy revelation, wasn't it?
Yeah. I'm like, why would they admit that?
I didn't even know what that. Well, he said it a few times. I'm like, what are you even talking about?
Yeah.
And it took me a little bit of time. And I remember an interview. He said something about like Stephen Greer got this one thing right. And then I'm like, wait. So you start connecting those two.
Yeah.
Yeah, the CE5 protocol. And man, they've got literally that's a job in the government is to call in UFOs.
I was shocked too.
Whoa.
And did you catch? He even said that some of those people are children.
Yeah, he mentioned the selection process, right? And the children have a little more open mind to it, right? Like they're just not as closed.
That's right.
Yeah.
So mind blown, right?
Totally.
Yeah. Then the other methodology is a machine that generates. They're calling a dog whistle, and it's proprietary. They're not going to tell. I think Jake Barber. I saw a quick clip of him explaining, "Hey, we're not going to let this go because it's our proprietary thing. We're not going to tell you exactly how we do it, but it's a combination of frequencies that they place." And this is what blew me away. They're 100% effective. Every time they have used that dog whistle,
what would
a UAP has appeared. What
is the assumption that you have to make if you're calling in a UFO with basically a frequency, and everything's frequencies. So frequencies are probably the base unit of the universe.
Yes,
but
agreed.
When you say calling them in, it's almost like are they coming to you? Like, oh, I hear it or I feel it, I'm going to that, or are we assuming that they appear? Maybe they're all over in another dimension and then they appear. Like, what do you think that is?
Yeah, to your earlier question, and now you're bringing it up. Today, and I reserve the right to change my opinion based on new information I have already, but I think dimensionality is where we need to be focusing. Yeah. I think that's probably what's going on. And so that being said, yes, I think whatever the frequency or combination of frequencies are, tap into something that they can hear. If hear is probably not the right word, but interpret, and it draws them in, which says a lot of things. Like, for one thing, it's not like we're commanding them; it's like we're inviting them. So they have a desire, apparently, to interact with us, right?
It just sounds odd. Like, okay, so I've got this frequency that I'm going to put out there, and they're going to come. Like, why would they? I would feel like if they have a little bit more command of these dimensions, why would that be the signal that they need to interact with us? Like, it's not like we're offering peace or something like that. It's just like, here's this technology. It just, I wonder if, I have no idea, but if you're, I don't know what that would do, but it seems, I just feel like it would seem not exactly the way it would be as if you use this piece of technology and then they just came at your beck and call. Do you think there's something else maybe there?
Yeah.
Maybe it's open in something that.
Yeah, there has to be more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. He even said, look, it's not like playing these tones are heard.
Yeah.
I think in that clip he said, you don't broadcast it through a speaker or anything like that. So whatever frequency or frequencies that it is interpretable by them in some way that's unknown. But the whole psionics thing is an entirely different animal, right? An entire different methodology. This is frequency related. This is consciousness.
Oh, so
right?
They're not even using the same.
No, they don't use the dog whistle machine with the psionics folks.
It's a totally different medium.
Total different methodology. And so, to your point earlier of like Stephen Greer, which I have mixed feelings about Stephen Greer, but this is really confirmation to me that the CE5 protocols work. Why they work, I don't know. How he figured that out years ago, I don't know. But
that was my point. Like, you use the dog whistle in one mechanical way, and you use your consciousness to achieve the same thing in a more conscious way. Like, that's why I was getting at. Okay, they're different.
Yeah.
But it could be that, like, I have a lot of thoughts about this, but, consciousness is a unique thing. There's people I know, I have friends who don't even believe in it at all. It's a manifestation of our biology. But there's also very well-known physics that, the double split experiment, the Schrodinger's cat, if a tree falls in the woods, does it really fall if someone's not watching it? Those types of arguments are real. Those are conscious arguments.
Yes.
And those are science. That's physics. That's
right.
Real physicists doing experiments going, wait a second, when I didn't observe that, there was a different result than when I did. So there's something going on there.
Yeah.
And there's something about how we interact with our environment that we change things. We interact with things that we don't understand it.
Yeah, 100%. And that was my transition from the nuts and bolts to the woo. The double slit experiment really grabbed my attention. And to me, it really speaks to what you're talking about, is that the very act of observing our conscious intent affects these, photons. I mean, how can that be?
It's wild.
So yeah, there is something going on, and it's like you. I have lots of thoughts, and you could go anywhere with it. But it does appear to me too that frequency, of which consciousness can be a frequency. Our brain is electrical, and we have thoughts, and our synapse, shoot electricity, and blah blah blah. So it's like maybe the universe is the base. The nature of the universe is frequency, of which consciousness is an apparent frequency. So maybe that's why everything is connected, even matter. They say that this is actually energy. It's just in a state that forms matter. And so there's just so much weird stuff, and I love physics too, that I just don't think we can say. Even the sharpest, smartest people with the limited data, we just don't know yet, right?
We when we look back 500 years from now, if we end up here this long, we're going to look back and go, man, we didn't know anything about science, right? And so I think you have to keep that into perspective, like how little we actually know. Yeah, we know more than we did yesterday and 50 years ago and 100 and 500. But the more I think about it, the more I think we just really don't know a lot of things. Our science really doesn't, and it probably never will, never designed to tell us why, just how. And then from the hows, we can kind of make some guesses. But I think we just have to keep in mind and understand that science is not our God, I think. Maybe it's a way to put it. I think there's a lot of people out there, and I think scientists unintentionally have made science people's God in a way. Like, believe science, and if there's anything that's not measurable, then just don't believe it at all. And I think the more that I get older, the more I realize that there's so much we don't know, and there's so much outside of measurement that which makes this world a wild, fascinating place. So
yeah, that's age and experience talking right there, right? You just learn over the course of your life that things aren't like I thought they were. When you're a child and young kid, and you're taught in school, and you do what you're told, and you accept that, and that's fine. And generally, it's fine. But the reality is, we don't know jack squat, and we know enough to survive, which is great, right, as a species. But boy, to further ourselves. It's a sketchy proposition, man. Like you said, are we even going to be here in 500 years or 100 years? I mean, nothing is a given.
That's right.
Yeah.
I have a thought that I want to run past you and see what you think. There are still some people out there, remote viewers, precognition, things that don't make a lot of sense to our everyday world, that are real. There are some people who really can do this. I mean, there was a 20-year project in the CIA about remote viewing. So that's real. That's not fantasy. Do you think that maybe over time we've just lost that ability? Maybe humans have that ability, but we lost it because, we've got to survive, and, being able to see in different dimensions or see the future, whatever you can do is, see different places. just isn't a survival mechanism, really. Like, we need to make sure that we build shelter and get water, and we need to, the hard things that make us need to survive.
You're talking about like premonition, like seeing something.
Premonition, like precognitive abilities and premonitions and these
intuition.
Things. Well, we definitely.
That's a form, right? Sure. Everyone acknowledges we have intuition. It's just a higher degree of intuition.
Sure.
Yeah. No, I think that is absolutely true. I think, so I have a little bit of experience with remote viewing and remote viewers. I actually have a group of people come to my ranch once a month, and we do things. And one of the individuals is a full-time professional remote viewer for the government.
Wow.
And so he is very careful what he can share with us, but he has trained us how to do it. And so I've had the experience where I have remote viewed. Now, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
But I mean, when it works, it really works. It would be like you would pick a place in your mind, you know, maybe it's like, I don't know, when you're a kid, you grew up on a lake and there was a lake house in that lake or whatever. You have that image. And then I try and relate to you what that is. Maybe you write it on a paper or whatever. I've had the experience where I've identified that more than once. Now I have look, I'm not psychic. I'm not special in any way, just your average Joe. However, I did it. So what that tells me is that probably everyone has that capability.
Yeah.
It just needs to be nurtured. You need to be trained and
like a muscle.
And whatever level you have, some people would, some are going to be low level and some, really high level in terms of their capability. So I think it is something that is just our sixth sense, our intuition, whatever you want to call it. It's just capabilities that, are sort of dormant because I think the more we use technology, the less we need those things, right?
Yeah.
Just like a muscle.
Yeah, maybe that's the plan. Maybe they're dormant on purpose. That's the technology. And hey, get this little 4-inch screen in front of your face all day. But I find it weird, people will say when you talk about this, people will go, "You guys are whack jobs, man. That's crazy. That stuff doesn't like it's hard for some people to be able to believe that." But then it's like, dude, we only use the average person 3% of your brain. And then, like, if you're operating at a high level, you're using like 6% or 7%. But your brain is like literally the best supercomputer ever.
Yeah.
If you could tap into 100% of your brain power, the amount of things that you could do would blow your mind. Well, so people know that. Science tells them that, so they go, "Oh, okay."
I looked that up one time, and it's true and not true. But it's like it's not the amount of your brain that you use, but it's the pathways. It's like having high bandwidth versus low bandwidth. Mm-hmm. So it's the bandwidth, but that's true in bandwidth. So basically that's what it is, the connections, the synapses that are just not being able to be used or whatever. So but it's interesting that we have lost the ability, or maybe one point in time we had the ability to use 100% of that, and we've lost it because we focused it or whatever on something specific for our survival.
Yeah, the research on stuff now is like, like ketamine therapy. They're like, well, how does that help with trauma? Like, because it creates new pathways. So your brain has the ability to do these kind of things. Mm-hmm. And then people go, "Oh, you guys are crazy. There's nobody." Nope, that's sci-fi TV stuff. Well, maybe not. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. Now they're prescribing LSD. They are prescribing mushrooms.
Psilocybin.
Yeah, psilocybin. So. Yeah, our understanding of the brain, again, is limited,
That whole thing is wild, too, because it's hard for me to believe. Well, this is my theory. I should say this is my theory on it. And I've never done it. I've just listened to a lot of Joe Rogan podcasts where they talk about it, right? But he's like, it's hard. My theory is that it's opening up pathways that are closed. Mm-hmm. I mean, having hallucinations, I don't know. I would just imagine that's what it's doing. And those pathways maybe at one point in time were open to us and they've closed over time due to something. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of people, if you do it right, they say it really can help you. I mean, Sean Ryan, for instance, basically saved his life.
Yeah. I'm aware of that. That's right.
So.
Yeah, there's a program through the 100 Club now where firefighters with like PTSD, they're able to get ketamine therapy.
Oh,
and
really?
guys are saying, dude, it works amazing. Like the way they feel when they're done is like you notice things. Like, if you walk down the street, most people have their phone in their hand. If you just walk down the street, you might not hear a bird chirp. You might not hear but they go, when I'm done, I walk down the street, I'm like, oh man, wow. Like I'm noticing. And it's not like trippy. It's not like they're just like, I'm super aware of my surroundings and how my interactions with people, like, ooh man, that might not have been the best thing to say. Like you're just really super aware.
Wow.
The other thing too about being open to that stuff is like your brain's so full with all the stuff that you do on a daily, weekly basis. That's your family, your work, your job. What do you got to do next? It's so hard to actually focus on something for a long period of time. You really got to train yourself to focus. Like, so when you say hear a bird chirp, I'm thinking to myself, I don't, because I'm thinking about 10 things at the same time. What I got to do today.
You don't notice that, right? Like, like you got birds all over your property. Yeah. I literally hear no birds all day, right? But like,
you got this to do, that to do. Yeah,
I hear donkeys.
I guess it goes above a certain tone. You hear it, it catches your attention. So
yeah. And the other thing too, I think, is to illustrate kind of your point with the way humans are. I'll just use this. Is not a nice example, but I think it'll illustrate my point. Is look at school shootings, right? Now, when the first one happened, the whole world went bananas, right? Yeah. And that was on the news 24/7 for months, but today, like this year, there's been hundreds of these mass shootings, right? Doesn't even make the news now. And yes, we feel bad about it and all of that. And I'm not dissing people for it. But what happens is, and this is why I think disclosure, people worry about it, freaking everyone out. But here's the thing. Food, clothing, and shelter, right? Or paying your mortgage, taking the kids to soccer, all those things, they seem petty, but they are the fabric of our life, right? So a big, terrible event can happen, traumatic and all of that. But in pretty quick order, we're able to kind of process that, set it aside in lieu of, hey, I got to go to work. I've got to get groceries. I got, the baby needs formula, whatever it is. That's a nature of being a human being, right? It's just that daily survival, food, clothing, shelter. And these other things that happen, they're huge, they're traumatic, but, we can get through that. We have the ability to get through it. So if disclosure happens, will religion fall? No. Will the stock market crash? No. Will, oil cease to be a thing? No. There'll be a reaction, but then it will temper and then kind of back to normal.
I think like what we talked about earlier with you have to literally show an alien next to the president, like shaking hands. I think there's so much distrust in government now anyway. I don't even know if disclosure would be fully trusted. People don't know if they're going to be lied to. Okay, we're going to disclose this. Is it a lie or not? I mean, who was it that came out? And I think it was David Grush, who was one of the first, most recent guys who came out. And there were so many guys in that space who were just like, it's bull crap and it's a lie. He's he's a plant.
Misinformation.
Yeah, misinformation.
Well, you look at an event that happened in 2020 and what we were told about it, and now the information that the medical community is coming out with, and people in a certain camp still don't believe that information. So it's like and now you're giving it to them. Like you're saying, well,
100%. Okay, we didn't. We didn't came from a lab. 100%.
Yeah, we didn't understand it at the time, so it's okay and I think everybody, even from super conservative to so far left, kind of go the first 2 weeks, like when people were wearing trash bags, and painting masks in the grocery store. Everybody's like, dude, what is this? This is crazy. We should all be afraid of this. And I think the American people as a whole were like, okay, till we know more about this, let's be careful. And then as the information started coming out. To now, this point, like all of this factual information that you can't dispute now, there's still the people that are going, no, you guys are wrong. I'm like, okay.
That was the biggest event, I think, in our lifetimes that gave the biggest distrust to the government. Like we've always had a little bit of but I never challenged the pharmaceutical companies. I didn't get the flu vax for a long time because I just didn't need it. I wasn't getting sick and I was like, I don't need it. But I wasn't like questioning vaccines. But then as things come out and you start to see the lie after lie, you're like, what is the government lying to us about? And maybe they're not. Maybe there's a lot of shit underneath the surface that we don't know. But what it comes to now is where, you are with UFO and UAP disclosure. It's like, are people actually going to believe it after what we've been through the last 5 or 10 years?
I worry.
I think there's a certain element of people that would say they're doing us a service because the American people couldn't handle it. There would be chaos. Right. There would be civil war. There would be all this, oh my God, aliens are real. But really, I think, like you said, most people would go,
yeah. We got other things. I got my bills to pay.
Yeah. So in 30 minutes, cool. I got to be at the
the kids got to get to school.
Yeah. Yeah. The people that believe in them would go, yeah. See, we knew it. We told you. Yeah. The other people would go, there's a certain population that go, yeah, I don't care. It doesn't affect my daily life. Cool. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Congratulations.
And that's probably true of everything in life, right?
Sure.
I mean, it just, some people are interested and some aren't, and then again, the whole convincing what's true, what isn't, and in the last 15 years or whatever. Again, kind of our comments earlier that truth and proof aren't so black and white anymore, and it's super hard to nail it down. And so I think, just as an individual, you have to, keep your feet on the ground, you have to be open to everyone and everything, but you're going to have to make that decision in your own heart and mind. Yeah. It is that personal, I think, of a decision, and you just can't go with the flock anymore. In the old days, majority of people probably had mostly things right, and then you had your factions and that went off on the extremes. But now it's just all blended together, and it's like, man, that which is extreme is as normal as that which isn't. That is weird. That is super hard to navigate. So, but that's where we're at.
So, Arizona, if you're going to be in MUFON, Arizona's probably the place to be, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty good.
And then on top of Arizona, you've got, Fire in the Sky, the Travis Walton story, which is wild, and you've got all kinds of other things, the Navajo Reservation. But on top of all of that, you got Sedona, right? Mm-hmm. So Sedona is known worldwide as the hot spot. Now, what's the truth? Is that real?
So I would say this, putting my MUFON hat on. So Arizona is always in the top 5 in the number of cases. Now, you have to ask why, right? I think there's a lot of factors that can play. So, for example, here we have good weather, right? And we have people who are, we have 7 million people in this state, and a lot of your time is spent out of doors. Something a lot of people don't get. I'm from the Pacific Northwest. When I lived there was no sky.
Can't see anything,
it was just all tall trees, right? I came here and I'm like,
you can see
my God, the sky is huge here. And it's clear and it's blue, because up there is 9 months of the year is gray skies, right? So just that, the locality, the geography, the weather, all those things. So more people are out and are more apt to see something. The lifestyle and that sort of thing, and then population. But like California, Florida, and New York are always battling out in the top 3.
Really?
Yep.
Well, California and New York makes sense. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on there.
But, I find California is obvious to me because it's like Arizona in that big sky and good weather and lots of people.
Yeah.
New York is different, because it's so, it's just so different. And then Florida, I think, common sense there too in terms of the weather and the geography.
And not Texas stuff. Though, huh?
And what?
Not Texas?
No, Texas. Yeah, Texas is up there. They would be the top. Those are the top 5: California, Arizona, Texas, Florida, and what was the other one I said?
New York.
I'm just stoked you made the top 5 and something.
Top 5. So we get over 300 cases a year, which is almost one a day in Arizona. Now, some people feel like, well, only 1 out of 10 get reported. No way. I say at a minimum 1 out of 100, and maybe even more like 1 out of 1,000. Because who knows what to do?
Right.
Who to contact, how to make a report. MUFON's not that big, We have 5,000 members, but There's another organization called New Fork. They don't investigate. They just take reports. That's out of Washington State. Those two are kind of it. And then people maybe would call the police and get the runaround or the airport and blah, blah. So I think it is a lot greater. So if you think about that, MUFON, for example, we have well over 100,000 cases in our database right now. We have probably another 100,000 in boxes in warehouses, right? Pre-computer. So to me, that there are probably millions of sightings and contact experiences. They just don't get reported. But you know, Arizona, it is a hot spot. I think it's, you know, a hot spot in terms of reports. I think the deserts too. There's some attraction to deserts for them. And then Sedona in particular, well, you know, just look at the geography. I mean, it's just stunning and beautiful, and it's almost like an alien world, right? The red rocks and the formations, and then just kind of the people that have settled there. And so it's created this, you know, I don't even know the word for it, but I'm supportive of Sedona, and it is a special place. But it's attracted a lot of people who go down that woo-woo path, right? And so now it's like some kind of spiritual thing, and there's vortexes and portals, and you know, there may be vortexes and portals. There very well may be, and weird stuff happens there, no doubt about it. I don't know if you guys have heard of the Bradshaw Ranch.
Yes.
Okay.
You'd probably have to refresh my memory, but I feel like once you do, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so it's like Skinwalker Ranch in Utah.
Yeah.
A family owned that in the 40s up through the 80s, 90s actually. It was like an old TV movie studio, like a old West type thing. And anyways, the family that lived there had all the experiences you're hearing about at Skinwalker Ranch. You know, they even saw dinosaurs. You know, just all this really bizarre, weird stuff. And it's still going on today. And so, so yes, there is something unique there. But what it is, I don't know. But yeah, I went on a tour, a UFO tour, where they take you out with military grade night vision, and you go out into the desert and they take you out there for a couple hours. I'm blown away by what I saw. You know, I mean, some of it's explainable, some of it is satellites, you know, aircraft, but there were things that just are not explainable. So it's,
I have this interesting story. I didn't even think about it until you said that. But so I'm a former military guy. I was a SEAL, and East Coast SEAL, and we knew it was 2005. We were at war in the desert, so we did a lot of our training in Nevada, lots of it, in northern Nevada, southern Nevada, all over Nevada, western California, some of it in Arizona, but mostly in that area. So we go and we land in Vegas, and we go up to this place. We're like, hey, you know, you have to take this back road and blah blah blah. Nothing was on my radar. I go in, we do our training. I think we're there 2 or 3 weeks. We're staging out of an airport hangar, like a craft hangar. That's totally normal. Driving around, we're staying on site, and we go out into the surrounding hills, and we're doing a lot of our operations, just training operations. Years go by, I'm watching a documentary on Area 51, and I'm like, I know that place. And I pull it up on my map, Groom Lake. I'm like, I've been there. Like, I know. I could see an aerial photograph of the hangar that we were in, and that lake was Groom. I went for runs along that lake at night. There's horses and it was an airport. I'm like, whoa, wow, this is wild. I'm like, if I knew I was there, I'd be looking for stuff.
Yeah.
But nobody, they just called it Tonopah or something.
Yeah,
we're going to Tonopah.
That's one.
Okay.
There was areas that they wouldn't let you guys go.
Oh, sure.
Did you
Yeah.
guys they kind of get, hey, this is your spot. Don't even like
when we went
with a SEAL. I'm guessing you guys had some top secret clearances.
Yeah, but we didn't have any need to know.
But there was,
that's
but still
right.
with that kind of clearance. Like, hey man, like we're the guys. Yeah, you still can't go.
Well,
over here.
we would.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, we never really even thought much about it, or I didn't. And nobody said anything because I'm sure some of our top guys knew. They had to have. They were the ones who planned the trips. We knew a guy there. The guy who planned our trip was our one of our lead guys, who's a senior chief. He had a buddy there. His name was Plum Bob. I remember to this day. He called himself Plum Bob. I forgot what I was going to say now. Anyway, we were totally oblivious of the fact that we were there for, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks. It was a long time. We staged out of that area.
Totally unsuspecting when you're sitting there, obviously.
Totally
Like,
unsuspecting.
I'm thinking this is some top secret.
Yeah,
This
wow.
is like a,
What I was going to say is, we would go to lunch, and there was a chow hall there, and there would be guys coming in from this super locked area. Like I didn't even know where they came from, but they would come. There was a way to, the chow hall, like everybody shared it, but guys would come from different areas that had a lot different access than we did. We came from an area where there wasn't a whole lot. We didn't need to do anything. But we knew that. And I remember eating lunch with guys there that had these like special badges or whatever, and we didn't even ask the questions. I mean, I look back and go, gosh darn it, if I would have known, they couldn't have said, I'm sure they would have said anything, and I'm sure there's nothing to see that we would have ever been able to gain access to without. I can't, it still blows my mind to this day.
Yeah.
I'm watching a documentary on TV, and I'm just, because they show this aerial photo.
Yeah.
I've seen that area. Wait a second. I've been there.
That is so awesome.
And then I just
feel like most of it's probably underground.
I'm sure.
Because it doesn't, when you look at, before you couldn't even pull up satellite
That's right,
photos. It
yeah.
was super, now you can.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's very unimpressive from the air.
I think
you know
back
what I mean? It's
then-
just like a bunch of old hangars and older.
Yeah. Well, and those hangars were brand new. They were actually just built, but the rest of the whole place was a dump.
Yeah.
And I remember too, like we would go and, we would have to find something to do for fun. It was a base. Obviously it was a base. And everything was old. Like it was just like, I almost thought it was not even active almost. There's just a few people on there. And there was this one spot that you could go that was like an entertainment area. They had, I think, maybe some racquetball courts and like a little eating area and a bar-ish. And I remember walking through it one day, and it was like, I don't even think anybody was manning it anymore. And it was just like so run down. I remember, and then anyway, and then we would just be all out in the surrounding mountains doing a lot of land nav, a lot of like vehicle navigation. That was the big thing that we did, was vehicle navigation. I don't think we did a lot of shooting. I don't think we could shoot much out there, but there was a lot of land navigation that we were doing in vehicles and stuff, because that was a pretty treacherous terrain. Anyway, I'm way off topic, but I just thought that was an interesting story to share. On
That's so
podcast.
awesome. It's funny you bring it up. I'm going there Thursday.
Are you really?
Yeah. Yeah.
So are you getting in?
No.
Okay.
No, we'll just be the looky-loos.
Okay.
I went in 2015
did
with
you?
my wife, and she made me go to Vegas to see Donnie and Marie, and I said, okay. But while we're there, I said, all right. And I just got my car. It's a beautiful 2014 Camaro SS convertible, red, black stripes, just beautiful. Anyway, so it was like April, and we drove all the way to the back gate, and here in my brand new car, top down, 14-mile road, just straight as an arrow, dirt road, just dead ends in the mountains there. So I'm going about 35 because rocks are flying. I'm like, what am I doing with my beautiful car? But so we're driving along, and all of a sudden, we get strafed by a jet that we never saw. I mean, when a military jet goes over you, it just shakes your guts, right? And the top was down. We had 360 view. We could not see it.
Wow.
And I thought it was right over us, maybe 2,000-3,000 feet. Never saw it. So that was kind of weird.
Never saw it. You heard it. You felt it.
Never saw it. So no sonic boom. So he wasn't going, faster than the speed of sound. But I don't know. So that was kind of cool. And then we went up to the back gate, and it was just like you see on TV. We get there, and then this Jeep pulls up on the hill, flashes his lights at us, and then I'm scared. I'm like, oh, we better go.
He flashes lights back. That's how you know the deal's on. The deal's on.
But, that was just for fun. But I have a buddy. We're going to Vegas for a podcast type show. And then, but he's never been, so he's so geeked up about it. But I'm going to look forward to going again. It's been a while.
Is there somebody like manning a gate, or is it just a fence? Or some of that is remote.
You could just drive right
sensors
in
and whatnot.
Yeah, they have sensors.
It's not even really like an actual in some of those areas.
It's intimidating because there's, first of all, the sign that says, hey, deadly force, right?
Yeah.
And then they have these military communication equipment and tripods and things that kind of, you're in this little, you're kind of, there's a valley and the road goes through it, and they can, it's like a choke
it's like
point.
a one-lane road.
Yeah.
Like nothing on each side.
But they're serious about protecting, and I'm not interested in doing something wrong.
Yeah.
I don't
You just
mind
want to see
going up to the line.
You just want to see it, that'd be something.
Yeah,
if we were in Vegas, hey, you want to drive? It's going to take an hour and a half, but you're really just going to see the gate. Yeah, I kind of do. I kind of do want to see that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, they must have had like our rental car information because we never got stopped or anything. I do think there was a gate guard, if I remember correctly, but it was like nothing spectacular. It was not even spectacular. It was like almost like, is this real security?
Yeah.
But obviously the security is all around.
Yeah.
And we were oblivious. We just were like driving, drunk
14
seals coming
miles
back on a Sunday afternoon.
14-mile road. They knew mile 13. You were on that road.
absolutely.
Like it's
100%.
they have
Isn't
to.
it crazy? Like, I just think back about that and go, we were just totally oblivious, and we were probably being monitored. Dozens of miles out from there, they probably knew our vehicle. They probably knew, because we didn't have any problem. We just went right in. But of course, you have the wrong vehicle. You don't have the right credentials. Boom, you're stopped immediately. Yeah.
No, that's fascinating. And, Area 51's got really cool history. And there's a book written by, her name's Annie Jacobson.
Oh, yeah, I read it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Area 51. Excellent.
Yeah.
Book. I mean, just, the entire history of it all, 1955, and nothing but a tent out there to start,
Wild.
and look what it's been developed into. And then I'm sure you're familiar with the Bob Lazar story. Yeah.
S4.
And so that was a big deal in the late 80s, early 90s.
Now, that was that's not Area 50. That's a different location, right? Or is it off?
Well, he called it S4. So you go into Area 51 proper, and the Janet airline planes land you there. He rode a bus because he lived in Vegas, and he rode a bus. But S4 is like a couple miles south, and it's like dug into a mountain, and it has hangar doors that are painted and like the dirt and stuff like that. And then that underground access, like you were talking about. So
I remember watching a Bob Lazar thing and going, okay, this is where we trained. Where
Really?
as far because
how cool.
I don't remember ever seeing. Of course, I don't remember seeing. We didn't see it.
Maybe they did the Men in Black thing. Maybe they erased your.
Yeah.
Well, I just wonder, they probably would have kept us away from it. I'm sure we were there at their leisure. We had there was some connections. Hey, we've got a lot of desert out here. They're probably not going to point us in the direction where all the secret stuff is. We're probably on the opposite side.
You're probably
of it.
walking over the top of it. Didn't even know it.
That's what I'm like.
Who knows, man?
Knocking on the.
Yeah. That's a big deal in the UFO world, is the underground bases.
Yeah.
I mean, it fascinates me, but it's pretty logical.
Sure.
That's
Well,
what you do.
it's so unassuming.
Yeah.
Like the photos that I've seen, like chain link fence, like who's this going to stop? But like it's just so unassuming, and like I think by design,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
If it's unassuming and it's like some rickety chain link fence, obviously sensors everywhere, and a sign that says "We'll kill you if you step over this line," but still pretty unassuming. It makes you think, there's really probably not much to see.
Totally.
right.
Over
Totally.
here,
I mean,
you know?
that's part of I think that's part of what they want.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You roll up to NORAD, big door, and there's something back here that I really want to Fort Knox. Anything? There's something in here that I need to see.
Okay, let's start getting nosy. But if you roll up to a base that looks totally dilapidated,
Yeah.
and like, what is this? You don't even think twice about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they used to. I mean, like, there's a documentary I watched. They used to fly people in on like a 737. Okay, go to work.
Yep.
Get back in the plane. Totally like unmarked plane. I'm like, okay, you're
Yeah.
out. And then like your day at work, you fly on a plane. You go to work. You come back, get on the plane. They fly you back to. Wow, what's the airport? Yeah, McCarran in Vegas, and then you take your car home and whatever, and it's just like,
Didn't one of those planes crashed? Huh? One of those. I remember looking.
No, I had not heard that. One of the Janet Airlines that.
And Bob Lazar, I think, was supposed to be on that plane, and he decided not for some reason. But they had a plane crash. Oh man,
wow.
I should do some more
how
research.
many survivors?
None, I don't think on that. Must have been. Must have been guys who knew too much. Yeah.
They didn't have a need to know.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. And I have to admit, ufology has its lore, And, you know, in the absence of facts and truth, what do? You know, the vacuum gets full of stuff. And some of it's probably true, some of it's not, some of it's plausible, some of it's not. But, you know, that's kind of what makes it fun and interesting to be part of, too.
Yeah, to take that next leap of ideas, like what could this be? Now, do you guys run into any other types of, like, kind of, let's just say, like, Bigfoot, right? These types of things. Do you guys take that, or is that totally separate?
So MUFON's position, you know, organizational position is we don't investigate paranormal. We're just UFOs.
That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
Thank you.
However, paranormal is frequently accompanies UFO stuff. So again, my whole transition from nuts and bolts to woo-woo is because a lot of other stuff's going on. So we will investigate. Well, we acknowledge the paranormal experiences, and I'll just say we don't emphasize it. I will investigate the UFO part. I will acknowledge the paranormal part. And frankly, personally, I'm involved with some paranormal stuff, paranormal groups. So I'm aware of what these paranormal things are and what they mean. But we don't really report that. And I'll illustrate one reason why. Our leadership wants to be credible, right, on the UAP topic. And so they don't, it's not our game, and we don't want to be part of it, but we acknowledge that there's some relationship. So we deal with it to the extent that we need to, but at a bare minimum.
Are there other organizations that you pass that along to? If there is stuff that's not in your...
I do, because I'm friends with one of those organizations called Phoenix Area Paranormal Society, PAPS, Jamie Vike, and I got acquainted over a case years ago, and we've been buddies, and we do stuff. I do some speaking and some of their stuff, and he'll come to some of ours. So there is a relationship. I will say that. There is a relationship, but organizationally, MUFON keeps that part on the down low, because they just... it's really not their specialty, and they want to focus on the UFOs. And frankly, to be considered credible by Aero and the United States government and Congress, MUFON has assisted greatly in their efforts and provided data and information to them. But they're just careful to protect, you know, the integrity of UFO investigations in that organization.
Do you think Aero... I mean, I guess you guys would have a good insight on this. Do you think they're a legitimate government organization? Do you think they have the resources everybody thinks they have? Or do you think it's another kind of like, here's a little nugget, get out of our way now, get out of our hair?
A little of both, right? So there's clearly been misinformation. In fact, the last director of it, Sean Kilpatrick, he was telling some untruths. He's no longer the director of it. So I think again, there's a civil war going on in the U.S. government. There are factions of folks that want it disclosed, and there are factions that don't want it. And we're seeing a blend of that. And so you have to take everything that's coming out of there with a grain of salt. But I think there are definitely people who are sincerely interested in disclosing and providing good information, and trying, you know, they're trying to navigate the halls of politics and Congress and the media and, you know, NASA and just whatever, the intelligence community. And it's just got to be like a minefield. I pity them in that way. You know, I think of my role in my organization, if I were in that position where I'm bucking leadership or management, or, you know, or deceiving employee, that would just be icky and just not something my personal integrity I wouldn't do. I'd have to leave, I guess. But you know, those people are in those positions, and some are fighting for it and some aren't. They're fighting against it.
Do you think it was set up though with the right intentions, or with the intentions? So like the people at the top are really trying to get the bottom of this, or are they just deflecting.
Yeah, I think so. You had mentioned earlier how government you have political people who are there 6, 4, 8 years, whatever it is, and then you have the bureaucracy and people who, like me, spend 25 years in there. I think that. I hate to say things, but I think it's just very complicated. I think that in theory, yes, Congress, make no mistake, Congress's interest is purely political. And that is, we have oversight over this and you're not giving it to us. That pisses me off.
Right.
That's really Congress's motivation as an institution. But individual people, different Congress people, Representative Luna, for example, who's kind of heading this. These people clearly have an interest and, clearly pro the possibility of it being not human, right?
Yeah.
So it's always this mix. And how it's going to ultimately shake out, I just don't know. Some people are talking about or giving a term to it, catastrophic disclosure, meaning either they show up, right? We have no control over it, or some accident happens that's irrefutable, or somebody within the government throws himself on the sword and it's super high level and not deniable. Maybe that's how it's going to go down. I don't know.
Who do they report to?
The House Oversight Committee.
Oh, that's it. They're not. Are they part of the DoD? Or are they their own little organization?
They're a congressional committee, basically. Okay. The DoD. Oh boy, those guys. Again, I feel bad for them. On the one hand, but on the other hand, I'm like, you guys are. They are charged with collecting reports from all branches of the government, compiling them in a report, and then investigating them. To your point on resources, ATIP, for example, was a handful of people. Project Blue Book was like 2 dudes and a secretary, right? However, what is different is that the Navy is providing information, the Air Force, the Army, whatever. And there's real data and real things to collect. Mm-hmm. And I think the nature of that makes this effort more legitimate and more likely to produce something. But again, you have those factions that want to suppress it.
Well, if you look at it and you think through the way that would work, you have ATIP, which is an organization trying to get to the bottom of this, and maybe they have investigators who really do. Mm-hmm. But then they have to go to these other organizations, right, like the Navy, the Army, and maybe they don't want to give that information up.
Yeah.
Maybe they've got information that's maybe off the books that they don't want to talk, Mm-hmm. It's crazy because it's the government. You think they should just share information, but that's just not how it works. And so, you would imagine even if ATIP was truly 100% wanting to get to the bottom of this, there's probably a lot of roadblocks in their way just getting the right information.
Yeah.
Knowing even who to approach because it's secret, right? So where do you even start?
Super great insight to that is a book just written by Luis Elizondo, who was the head of ATIP. It's called Imminent. He goes into, names, dates, the granular detail of what it was like for him, and Jay Stratton is one of his cohorts there, who is now very prominent, moving that program forward. And it's crazy how it works, how like chain of command, like Lou was a liaison to Mattis in Afghanistan. They were personally involved every day. Later, when the war's over and Lou is assigned to the Pentagon in his job, and Mattis is who he is, Secretary of State, he couldn't talk to Mattis because of the chain of command. And it would be highly inappropriate and looked down upon for him to do that. So he had to work through the chain of command, which, some of the people were roadblocks to this process. And so they had to figure out ways to get around these people. It's just really fascinating how, to navigate that whole cultural existence there. So, yeah, this is no easy feat. And for armchair
that's probably
people,
done on purpose to a certain extent, where it's like make access so difficult.
Oh, yeah,
that it's just,
100%.
I think what happens, this would be my guess, what happens, you create an organization, you create structure, you create hierarchy, fine. But then, and that's the way it should be. There needs to be structure.
Of course.
But then as it grows, people find ways to take advantage of that structure and go around it and use it to make things harder. I think most things are probably put in place for the right reasons, but used over time against itself. Almost probably like the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Founding Fathers probably didn't think a lot of things would be twisted in the way they're being twisted. So I just think that's the nature of people. They're going to get away with what they can after a structure is put in place, and let's use it in the way, to benefit them.
Mm-hmm.
Just my idea.
Yeah.
I wanted to make a comment about Jake Barber. I listened to the whole thing, 2.5 hours, 3 hours maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I think 95% of it, I thought, man, this guy's got his shit together. But, the first 10 minutes made me really skeptical. But then the next 2.5 hours was fine. I'm like, oh, he sounds like he knows what he's talking about.
Oh, you mean where he was emotional about the impact it made on him, that part?
No, mostly as he was talking about coming up through the Air Force.
Oh.
And how that whole thing transpired.
Mm-hmm.
I thought to myself, that just doesn't sound like that's the way it would happen in the military. We came up probably in the same time frame.
Mm-hmm.
He was an Air Force Special Forces guy. I was in the Navy. But they would probably be the same. And some of his wording was weird. Some of the way he talked about things and how he got special access and priorities and privileges based upon certain things. I thought, I don't know, man. Maybe. Possibly. But
was on your radar.
It was immediately, right. And there was a certain thing too that just really caught my attention because we all talk the same. We all have the same lingo, And he was like, "Yeah, we, they allowed me to go to the." He wasn't very clear on his special forces stuff. I think he was talking about training for special forces. Then they recruited him out of it, and he was a mechanic. And it was like, that's weird. Okay, I get it. Like if that's really the case, okay. But then he's like, but while I was a mechanic, they let me do these. He wasn't even clear about if it was the Air Force paying for him or if he was paying for it or why he was doing it. But he was doing all these special classes, like taking aviation classes and taking martial arts and he called them. Yeah, I was like part of. I was doing these clubs. I think he used the word clubs. I'm like, that's just not military lingo. That's not how we would describe it. The whole thing is weird in the first place because if what he's saying is true, I don't know, maybe there is a recruitment program out of training, special forces training in the Air Force into, hey, you're just going to be this random mechanic, but we're going to use you in a different way, and we're going to have you do all these civilian courses on your own, and we're not. And basically, it sounded to me like he wasn't even really instructed what courses to do, just go off and learn stuff. I just thought that was odd, and I thought, I don't know. Outside of that, I thought it was legitimate. But the first 10 minutes, him describing his coming up through the Air Force, I thought was...
Yeah, and an average guy like me is not going to pick up on that, not having experienced that culture. Yeah, and I mean, like I say, we have to take everything with a grain of salt. You know, everybody that comes up, whistleblowers, all of it. You got to look at it in its entirety. Yeah. Who knows? Yeah. But there is the crowd that will say Barber and them are misinformation guys. That I don't believe that, but there are people who do. So I got to respect it.
If you were going to put out misinformation, you'd want the most credible people, right? So it's so hard to understand. Like if you had someone that came out and was just wildly off base, and everybody like that would be dumb to even try to. So you just never know. You probably will have the most credible people who are the people. The most credible people will be able to give the most misinformation without anybody knowing. You know what I mean? So it's a hard thing. Anyway, I just thought I'd bring that up because.
Are you talking about like a virology type doctor?
Yeah, I guess you could.
Okay.
You could make the leap. Well, I could sit here and talk about this topic forever. Honestly,
probably out of
forever.
time.
I really would love to even dive into more of the physics side and the science side. But I think and especially because you're an engineer, and I know we touched on that. Maybe we'll have you again. But before we go, you want to tell us a little bit about your book and anything you want to plug?
Yeah. So my book entitled, UAP, A Beginner's Guide to Researching UFOs. The reason I wrote it was, I had kind of acquired all this knowledge, experience, and just wanted to put it down on paper.
Yeah.
But in 2017, when the Nimitz case came out and TTSA, Tom DeLonge, Lou Elizondo, all of those guys came out, it really changed ufology. Before that, it was like, you're a kook, that's it, right?
For sure.
Then it lifted the taboo on having a take on this or to be involved in it. And I had known and experienced, like our MUFON meetings, we'll have 100 to 300 people. 100 to 300 people. I think that's a lot, people interested in the topic. So, but what I was noticing is younger people were kind of demonstrating an interest. And I thought, you know what? It took me a couple years of research, and I had to go down some pretty silly rabbit holes. And then I found some good information. And I wanted to save people the trouble of going down rabbit holes in which they might not come out, or they may just drop the topic altogether, like I almost did on that reading that first book. And I wanted them to have some credible information devoid of any of the BS. And so this book is just very much, here's a big picture about UFOs. Here are the things that you need to know. Here are the rabbit holes that, go into it at your peril, but they're not necessary and they're not helpful. And then like the whole process, like, the importance of the scientific method, the types of data or evidence, just all sorts of topics that would give somebody, it's a quick read, it's only 125 pages or whatever, a quick read, but it's very succinct, it talks about political science of ufology. I touch on classic cases and why they're classic and what data in there has made them live on, and how that data differs from what we see today. I have a whole section on hoaxing and, all the platforms that we have today where people can monetize something. And so in the old days, if you wanted to fake a UFO sighting, you threw a hubcap in there and took a picture and hoped that was good, right? But now you have all the software and you can create this and make it available to millions of people in 15 minutes and then get it monetized and make thousands of dollars off of it. I mean, the incentive to hoax is a lot greater is what I'm illustrating. Yeah. But also people get used to that and do have the ability to wade through the garbage and that kind of thing. But so that was the purpose of the book, really, is to educate a new group of people who are coming into it because the taboo was lifted.
Yeah.
And that's podcasts like this, right?
Yeah.
You guys aren't UFO podcasters, right. But the topic has become mainstream enough that you can have a serious and intellectual discussion about it and not be laughed up or thought that you're a kook.
I think it was always pretty mainstream to just go, that's military technology, right? That's what people are saying. Then the military comes out and goes, yeah, we saw it too, and it's not ours.
Yeah.
And people are like,
yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is exactly it. So the credibility of this was upped by the character and the role of these people who brought it out. And so I just thought that was a good time and a good way to get it out there. And so, and now MUFON will use this book as part of its training. I'm very pleased to have been able to do it. I retire next year. I'll probably write another book. It'll be, probably more complex than this, but this is just a good entry into the topic. And I think if you read that, you're either going to say it's BS or it's the real deal. And at least you'll be educated, educated.
Well, Shane, thanks so much. Appreciate it. It was a fun engaging conversation.
Yeah, I loved it. Thank you.
And we just
guys.
scratched the surface, I feel
Yeah,
like.
we did, because there's so much
I
more.
know.
And sorry if I talk too much, but
No.
it's
You're,
a passion.
I think I talked too much. I was all
for me.
excited. I'm like giddy.
Yeah.
Real quick for people that are listening, what does MUFON stand for?
The Mutual UFO Network.
Okay.
Not changing their name, huh? Now that it's UAPs.
Yeah,
And then we're-
no, and I have a fondness for the term UFO.
I do too.
Right? It's,
I do too.
And it's interesting that was coined by the Air Force in 1953, and then in the late 60s, a few smaller groups began to realize, hey, that term is so loaded.
Yeah.
You're not going to get scientists to jump on. Let's create another. So UAP was actually, I think the earliest I found was in the late 60s. Jenny Randalls is her name, and she was a British investigator. They started using that term, and then Nick Pope came out, who is a former DOD guy and on all the TV shows and stuff. Cool dude, absolutely love Nick. But he utilized it in a project called Condign, where they were trying to get the Ministry of Defense to appropriate funds to, conduct this very big landmark study called Project Condign. And he and his cohorts used that term to get before Parliament and so forth in a way that, wasn't UFO, right? UAP, it sounded very, the government is big on acronyms, right? And so it just, made the thing move through without any derailment from those loaded terms. So, yeah, love it. It's great. But thank you guys. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks, Shane.
Yeah.
Thank you.
got it.
See you, everybody.